He has been called the Silent One, the Lord of Time, the Great Reaper, Father of the Golden Age, the Black Sun, Kronos, El, Ninurta, the Lord of the Seventh Sphere, the Keeper of the Harvest, the Devourer of his children. But you know him by another name, Saturn. For thousands of years, this distant world has captivated the imagination of humanity. Entire civilizations built myths around it. Kings consulted its movements before making war. Priests watched it from towering temples. Philosophers transformed it into a symbol of time, fate, and wisdom. Secret societies would later adopt its name, believing it held the key to profound spiritual truths. But how did a faint point of light in the night sky become one of history's most enduring symbols? To answer that question, we must travel back more than 5,000 years to the birthplace of civilization itself. Our story begins around 3,500 BC in southern Mesopotamia, the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where the world's first great cities began to rise from the earth. As civilization took shape, the first great temple towers, ziggurats, began to dominate the landscape. From their summits, generations of priest astronomers climbed toward the heavens, carefully recording the movements of the wandering stars. Among them was the slowest and most mysterious of all, the planet we now call Saturn. Many scholars believe the biblical story of the Tower of Babel was inspired by one of these great Mesopotamian ziggurats. Even more intriguing, the book of Genesis places the Garden of Eden in this very region, between the Tigris and Euphrates, leading many historians and biblical scholars to identify Mesopotamia as the setting of humanity's earliest sacred story. Whether history, memory, or sacred tradition, it is here, in the cradle of civilization, that our journey into the mystery of Saturn truly begins. But Saturn was unlike the other wandering stars. Night after night, year after year, it crept silently across the heavens. While Mars blazed with the color of blood and Venus shone brilliantly before sunrise, Saturn moved with an almost unnatural patience, taking nearly 30 years to complete its journey through the zodiac. To the ancient Mesopotamians, this was no ordinary celestial object. It was a heavenly power whose movements seemed deliberate, almost eternal. Babylonian scribes gave it the name Kajamanu, the Constant One. Pressed into clay over 3,000 years ago, surviving cuneiform tablets preserve its name and record its movements with astonishing precision. Long before the invention of the telescope, generations of priest astronomers watched Saturn's slow passage across the sky, preserving its path in some of humanity's earliest scientific records. The same planet these ancient astronomer priests watched from the tops of their temple towers is the very same Saturn photographed today by modern spacecraft. More than 5,000 years have passed. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Empires have vanished. Yet Saturn has continued its silent journey across the night sky, unchanged. Yet for the people of Mesopotamia, these observations were never merely scientific. The heavens were believed to speak. Every movement of the planets carried meaning. Their positions foretold the rise and fall of kings, the outcome of wars, the success of harvests, and the fate of entire civilizations. Saturn was not simply observed, it was interpreted. Over time, Babylonian tradition came to associate Saturn with one of Mesopotamia's most revered deities, Ninurta. To later generations, he would often be remembered as a god of agriculture. But that title barely scratches the surface. Ninurta was a warrior, a hunter, a judge, a protector of civilization, the divine champion who brought order from chaos. Ancient hymns celebrate him as the slayer of monstrous forces that threatened both gods and mankind. In one of Mesopotamia's oldest surviving myths, Ninurta wages war against the demon Asag, a terrifying being whose presence was said to poison rivers and shake the foundations of the earth itself. Armed with divine weapons and aided by the gods, Ninurta defeats the creature, restoring order to a world on the brink of destruction. To the people of ancient Mesopotamia, this was far more than mythology. It reflected a fundamental belief that order must constantly struggle against chaos. And high above them, the slow and unwavering journey of Saturn became a fitting symbol of endurance, stability, and cosmic order. But civilizations rarely keep the same gods forever. Kingdoms fall, languages disappear, names are forgotten, yet symbols endure. As Mesopotamia gave way to new empires, Saturn's identity began to change. The planet remained the same, but the god behind it would take on an altogether different face. The Greeks would call him Cronus. Centuries passed. Empires crumbled, new kingdoms rose upon the ruins of the old. As Mesopotamian knowledge spread across the ancient Near East and into the Mediterranean, so too did the story of Saturn. Yet the god associated with the wandering planet was about to undergo one of the most remarkable transformations in religious history. The Greeks knew him as Cronus. Unlike the noble warrior Ninurta, Cronus was remembered as a titan, a member of a primordial race that ruled the cosmos long before the Olympian gods. According to Greek tradition, Cronus overthrew his own father, Uranus, seizing dominion over heaven in an act of violence that forever changed the order of the universe. But absolute power rarely comes without fear. An ancient prophecy declared that one day, just as Cronus had overthrown his own father, one of his own children would overthrow him. The prophecy haunted him, it consumed him, and in an attempt to escape fate itself, Cronus committed one of the darkest acts in all of mythology, one by one. As each child was born, he swallowed them whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each disappeared into the darkness of their father's body before ever knowing the world. The king of the Titans believed he had defeated destiny itself, but fate has a way of finding those who try to escape it. Only one child survived, his youngest son, Zeus. Hidden away by his mother, Rhea, the infant Zeus was secretly raised beyond his father's reach. In his place, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and presented it to Cronus, who, believing it to be his newborn son, swallowed it without question. Years passed. The child grew into a god, and the prophecy returned. Zeus challenged his father, forcing Cronus to release the children he had imprisoned within himself. The Titans fell. The Olympian gods rose to power. A new age had begun. Whether the Greeks consciously inherited elements of earlier Mesopotamian traditions remains a subject of scholarly debate. Yet across the ancient Near East and Mediterranean, Saturn's symbolism continued to evolve as cultures reinterpreted older ideas through their own myths and beliefs. Although the story of Cronus had come to an end, the planet remained. Night after night, year after year, it continued its silent journey across the heavens, watching civilizations rise and fall beneath it. When Rome inherited the mythology of Greece, Cronus received a new name, Saturn. Yet something remarkable happened. While the Greeks remembered Cronus primarily as the Titan who devoured his own children, the Romans remembered Saturn very differently. To them, Saturn became the god of agriculture, of abundance, and of prosperity. Ancient Roman writers spoke of a forgotten golden age, a distant era when Saturn ruled over humanity. It was said to be a time before war, before slavery, before greed, before kings claimed dominion over one another. The earth yielded its harvest freely. Justice came naturally. Humanity lived in harmony with the divine. Whether such an age ever existed was beside the point. For the Romans, it represented the memory of a perfect world that had been lost. Each winter, they celebrated that memory through one of the grandest festivals of the ancient world, Saturnalia. For several extraordinary days, Rome transformed itself. Public business ceased, courts closed, work came to a halt. Masters served their slaves, social hierarchies were temporarily reversed. Feasts filled the streets, candles illuminated the darkness of winter. Families exchanged gifts, laughter echoed through the empire. For one brief moment each year, Rome remembered the world as it believed it once had been, the golden age of Saturn. Yet beneath the celebration lay a fascinating contradiction. How could the same deity remembered by the Greeks as the devourer of his own children also become the symbol of humanity's lost paradise? The answer reveals something profound about the ancient world. Gods changed, names changed, empires changed, but symbols survived. Although Roman religion transformed Saturn into the guardian of a lost golden age, the planet itself remained the same celestial body first observed by Mesopotamian astronomer priests thousands of years earlier. Across centuries, across kingdoms, across languages, humanity continued looking toward the same distant light, finding new meaning in its slow and unwavering journey through the heavens. But history itself was about to change. The old temples would fall silent, the sacrifices would cease, the Roman Empire would embrace a new faith. Many believed the ancient gods had finally disappeared. They were wrong. Saturn was not forgotten. Its story was only beginning. As public worship faded, fragments of ancient philosophy, astronomy, and religious symbolism found new life in hidden manuscripts and esoteric traditions. The god had vanished, but the symbol endured. History has a curious habit of burying its oldest ideas. Kingdoms collapse, temples crumble, libraries burn. Yet some beliefs refuse to die. They simply wait, hidden beneath the surface, until another age is ready to rediscover them. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, the worship of the old gods steadily declined. Temples dedicated to Saturn were abandoned, public sacrifices ceased. The great festival of Saturnalia faded into history. But ideas are far more difficult to erase than monuments. Fragments of ancient astronomy, philosophy, and religious symbolism survived within forgotten manuscripts. Over the centuries, scholars, mystics, and philosophers began piecing together a hidden inheritance stretching back into the ancient world. Among these traditions was Hermeticism. Named after the legendary sage Hermes Trismegistus, Hermetic philosophy blended Egyptian, Greek, and later philosophical traditions into a vision of the universe unlike anything that had come before. To the Hermetic philosophers, the universe was not random, it was alive. Everything reflected everything else. The heavens mirrored the earth, the soul mirrored the cosmos. The famous Hermetic saying declared, "As above, so below." The planets were no longer merely celestial bodies, nor were they simply gods. They became living symbols of spiritual realities. Each represented forces that shaped both the universe and the human soul. Within Hermetic philosophy and later astrology, Saturn gradually came to symbolize discipline, responsibility, patience, contemplation, and the relentless passage of time. As the outermost visible planet known to the ancient world, Saturn marked the final boundary before the great unknown. It became associated with limits, with endings, with wisdom earned through hardship. To fear Saturn was easy. To understand Saturn was believed to require an entire lifetime. Yet not everyone viewed Saturn as a wise teacher. For others, it represented something far more unsettling, a prison, a boundary, the invisible wall separating humanity from something greater. These ideas would eventually find new expression among a remarkable collection of religious movements emerging during the first centuries of Christianity. Groups whose writings challenged many of the assumptions of the ancient world. Today, we know them simply as the Gnostics. Unlike the emerging Orthodox Church, many Gnostic teachers taught that the material universe was not humanity's true home. Beyond the visible heavens existed the pleroma, the fullness, a realm of perfect light beyond time, beyond matter, and beyond the limitations of the physical universe. Humanity, they believed, carried within itself a divine spark originating from that higher reality. But that spark had become trapped, not by accident, but within a flawed material world. Between humanity and the divine stood layers of cosmic rulers, ancient powers governing the heavens. Many Gnostic texts refer to these beings as the archons, the rulers. Their role differs from text to text, but they are often portrayed as powers that bind souls to ignorance and the material order. The soul's journey, therefore, was not simply one of death. It was a journey of ascent, a return, passing beyond the celestial spheres toward the divine source from which it had come. One of the most famous figures in Gnostic literature is the Demiurge, known by names such as Yaldabaoth, Samael, and Saklas. The Demiurge is portrayed in several Gnostic texts as the creator and ruler of the material cosmos. But unlike the supreme and unknowable God beyond the pleroma, the Demiurge is depicted as ignorant of the higher divine reality. In the Apocryphon of John, he boldly proclaims, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." Yet the text immediately reveals the irony. Unknown to him, a greater reality already existed beyond his reach. Not all Gnostic writings describe the cosmos in exactly the same way. Their teachings vary considerably, and they do not all assign identical roles to the planetary heavens. Over the centuries, however, some later esoteric traditions associated Saturn with the outermost visible sphere of the ancient cosmos. To them, Saturn became more than a planet, more than a god. It became the final threshold, separating the material world from the divine realms beyond. Whether understood as a celestial body, a mythological figure, or a spiritual symbol, Saturn had once again transformed. Its meaning changed, its mystery endured. The ancient world was ending, a new age was about to begin, an age of astrologers, alchemists, mystics, and philosophers, who would once again place Saturn at the center of their search for hidden wisdom. As the Middle Ages gave way to the Renaissance, Europe experienced a rebirth of forgotten knowledge. Ancient Greek philosophy returned, Hermetic writings resurfaced, Arabic scholars preserved and expanded the sciences of astronomy and astrology. Across monasteries, libraries, and secret circles of learning, a new generation of philosophers sought to uncover the hidden order of the universe. Among the 7 visible planets, none inspired more awe or more caution than Saturn. To medieval astrologers, Saturn was known as the Greater Malefic, not because it was considered evil, but because it governed life's greatest hardships: old age, loss, discipline, isolation, patience, mortality. It was the planet that reminded kings they would one day become dust. It humbled the proud. It tested the ambitious. It forced humanity to confront the one thing no empire had ever conquered: time. Yet those who truly studied Saturn did not see it merely as a bringer of suffering. They believed suffering itself could become a teacher. Every delay, every hardship, every season of loneliness could shape the soul into something stronger. For the greatest wisdom was rarely born from comfort. It was forged through endurance. The alchemists understood this better than anyone. To them, the metals hidden beneath the earth mirrored the hidden condition of humanity itself. Gold represented perfection, silver reflected purity, iron embodied strength. But Saturn belonged to a different metal: lead, heavy, dark, cold, dense, the least valued of the 7 classical metals. To ordinary people, lead seemed worthless. To the alchemists, it represented the beginning of the great work. They taught that the true purpose of alchemy was never simply to turn lead into gold. That was only the outward symbol. The real transformation was always the human soul. Lead represented the unrefined self, the fears we carry, the ignorance that blinds us, the burdens that weigh upon every human life. Gold represented enlightenment, wisdom, wholeness. The philosopher's stone was not merely a legendary object. For many alchemists, it symbolized the perfection of the soul itself, and every journey toward that perfection began with Saturn. The darkness before illumination, the burden before liberation, the long night before the dawn. Over the centuries, Saturn had become many things: a wandering star, a Mesopotamian symbol, a divine warrior, a titan, a Roman god, a philosophical principle, a Gnostic boundary, an alchemical teacher. Each civilization looked toward the same distant planet and discovered something entirely new. Yet one question remained. If Saturn had inspired humanity for over 5,000 years, why had its symbolism never truly disappeared? The answer would emerge not in ancient Babylon, nor in imperial Rome, but in the heart of 20th century Germany, a time of political upheaval, economic collapse, and spiritual uncertainty. There, a small group of philosophers and occultists would revive Saturn's ancient symbolism once again. They would call themselves Fraternitas Saturni, the Brotherhood of Saturn. Founded in Berlin in 1928 by Eugen Grosch, later known by the magical name Gregor A. Gregorius, the Fraternitas Saturni became one of the most distinctive esoteric societies of the modern era. Unlike many occult organizations that drew equally from numerous traditions, the Brotherhood placed one symbol above all others: Saturn. To its members, Saturn was not worshipped as an ancient Roman deity. Instead, it represented discipline, self-confrontation, limitation, and ultimately, transformation. They believed that every human being carried invisible boundaries within themselves: fear, pride, attachment, ignorance, and that only by confronting these inner limitations could genuine wisdom emerge. In their writings, Saturn became the guardian of difficult truths, not a destroyer, but a relentless teacher. The Brotherhood drew inspiration from astrology, Hermetic philosophy, ceremonial magic, Kabbalah, and centuries of Western esoteric thought. For them, Saturn symbolized the long and demanding path towards self-mastery, a path few were willing to walk. But history was once again about to intervene. As the National Socialist regime consolidated power in Germany, many independent esoteric organizations faced increasing restrictions or ceased public activity altogether. The Fraternitas Saturni was among the groups whose work was significantly disrupted during this period, yet the Brotherhood endured. Following the Second World War, it gradually re-emerged and continued publishing its teachings. More than 5,000 years after Mesopotamian priest astronomers first watched Saturn rise above the horizon, the ancient symbol still lived, still evolving, still inviting new generations to search for meaning in the heavens. But perhaps the greatest mystery was never the Brotherhood itself. It was why Saturn, out of every visible planet in the night sky, continued to fascinate humanity across thousands of years. For that answer, we must look not only into history, but into ourselves. For more than 5,000 years, humanity has looked toward the same distant world. Empires have risen beneath its light. Kings have lived and died, watching the same slow-moving star their ancestors once observed. The Sumerians called it Kajamanu, the constant one. The Babylonians associated it with Ninurta, the divine guardian who brought order from chaos. The Greeks remembered Cronus, the titan who devoured his own children in a desperate attempt to escape fate. The Romans honored Saturn, ruler of a forgotten golden age and namesake of one of history's greatest festivals. Hermetic philosophers transformed Saturn into a symbol of discipline, contemplation, and the hidden structure of the universe. Alchemists saw within it the beginning of spiritual transformation. Some later esoteric traditions associated it with the outermost boundary of the ancient cosmos. And in the 20th century, a small brotherhood in Germany chose Saturn as the central symbol of its philosophical path. The names changed, the myths changed, the civilizations changed, yet the planet remained. The same silent world that ancient priests watched from the summits of Mesopotamian temple towers is the same Saturn explored by modern spacecraft. Its rings, its storms, its moons, its mysterious hexagonal vortex at the North Pole, all existed long before humanity first looked toward the heavens, and they will remain long after we are gone. Across more than 5,000 years of recorded history, no other visible planet has accumulated quite the same tapestry of mythology, astronomy, philosophy, religion, and esoteric symbolism as Saturn. Why? Why did one distant point of light inspire so many different civilizations, separated by continents, by languages, and by thousands of years, to weave stories around the same celestial body? Was Saturn simply the slowest of the wandering stars, its deliberate motion inviting generations of observers to project meaning upon it? Did each civilization inherit fragments of older traditions, reshaping them into something entirely new? Or does Saturn endure in human memory because it speaks to something timeless within us? Time, mortality, discipline, power, fear, transformation. Perhaps every age looked towards Saturn and saw a reflection of itself, a mirror suspended in the heavens, not revealing the mysteries of the universe, but the mysteries of the human soul. Perhaps that has always been Saturn's greatest secret. Not that it changed humanity, but that humanity never stopped changing the meaning of Saturn. And tonight, as Saturn continues its silent journey across the night sky, it asks us the very same question it asked the first astronomer priests more than 5,000 years ago. When you look into the heavens, what do you see? Perhaps the greatest mystery was never Saturn at all. It was us.